Season's on the line for both the Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings, and we're going to cross over with Locked On Packers. It's Crossover Thursday on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You like that? 3, 1, 2, 3. You like it?
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome inside another crossover edition. Locked On Packers, Locked On Vikings, part 2 this season. Peter Bukowski from Locked On Packers and Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings. This crossover Thursday episode is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, for that first deposit match up to $100. Luke, good to be with you in a loser leaves town match preview.
Oh, yeah.
And we still don't know who is starting at quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings.
No, they're being cagey about it. I kind of feel like it's going to be Mullins because we've seen this exact thing before, like a month ago. Josh Dobbs had a 4-interception catastrophe game. The Vikings lost it. They had this, we're thinking about all 3 quarterbacks. We don't know who it's going to be. It was Dobbs again, but he was on a short leash. And when he struggled again more in the next game, he did end up getting pulled in the middle of the game. So you might see 2. You might get a 2-for-1, Peter.
Well, that would necessitate that QB to struggle. And against the Joe Barry defense, that has not been a thing that has happened of late. So that is the problematic part of it there.
The thing.
Let's just say that does happen. Who do you think would be first off the bench? Jaron Hall? Is
Jaron Hall? Yeah.
Cycle through the whole list here.
Yeah. It's everybody gets a turn. Everybody did get a turn. Jaron Hall did start.
Robin quarterbacking. It's a new thing.
Yeah. Well, it's like exactly 10 years ago, the 2013 Vikings season, when it was Christian Ponder, Matt Castle, and Josh Freeman. It's actually like weirdly similar in a very concerning way. But no, it would be Jaron Hall, I think. And I think if Nick Mullins doesn't start, it would be Jaron Hall. I think the Josh Dobbs thing is mostly over. He's been the emergency third quarterback, not the backup quarterback. And in the Raiders game where Dobbs got benched, he wasn't seeing concepts. I mean, it was very clear that he was totally 10 miles deep in his head. And you just got to get out of there. Right. It's like, okay, that's okay. Like thanks for what you did for us when you came in, really, really difficult thing to win those 2 games you won. Thanks for that. Now let's let people who are here for camp, take care of everything. But I will say, as much as you guys are all really mad at Joe Barry, and you have good reason, I totally get it. The Lions secondary might be the worst unit on the Lions, and they turned us over 4 times.
Yeah.
Don't believe, Peter. Believe.
It is one of those things where it's like when the stoppable force and the movable objects collide, anything can happen. And in this case,
yes.
I mean, the Lions defense has been one of the worst groups just in football over the last month or so. And yeah, 4 interceptions that's not going to be great. I just double checked in 2013. I wanted to see how many of those quarterbacks the Packers, do you remember how many the Packers played that season of the Vikings group?
Did they play all of them?
No. So the weird thing is they played Christian Ponder twice, and it was the Packers.
There was a Scott Tolzien tie in there.
There was a Packers. The Packers played multiple quarterbacks. That was the funny thing. Yeah. The Packers were the ones that played multiple quarterbacks. Because there was Aaron Rodgers the first time, and then Matt Flynn and Scott Tolzien in the second one.
Oh my God, Matt Flynn too.
And that was the 26-26 tie that ended up being crucial for the Packers in their push, at least for the playoffs that season. Back to this part of this
NFC North that year.
oh my God, an atrocity. And it's honestly not a great NFC North this year either. No. Especially with as vulnerable as the Lions look. What's so fascinating about this matchup to me, Luke, right now is the last time Jordan Love played the Vikings, the Packers receivers did not have a good day, but either did Jordan Love and Brian Flores. Speaking of thinking and being deep in your head, Jordan Love did not know which way was up for a lot of that game. The simulated pressures, especially, and that has been his bugaboo over the last couple of weeks. He's handled the blitz extremely well. It's the simulated pressures. It's when you show something
post snap looks. Yeah.
Yes. And so last week, the Panthers blitzed way more than they're used to. And they sped Jordan, and even on their sim pressures, they sped Love up. He'll get to the back of his drop and feel like the ball needs to go out, even if it doesn't. That post-snap ID is something he's got to get better at. And I wonder, we talked about this the first crossover, like, is Flores going to blitz him a lot, or is he just going to show a lot of pressure and end up backing out of a lot of it? I've given up predicting Brian Flores because that's the whole point is you can't do that. But it would be an interesting point in Jordan Love's development because this seems like it's the last sort of box to tick. Okay, he can ID at least a decent amount of time these simulated pressures and post-snap get to the right spots. Because since that Vikings game, I mean, he's been a top 10 quarterback by any metric you want to pick. And that was the last time he looked. Maybe I'm missing one. I think so. That was the one because it came at the end of the stretch of games where the ending, the Raiders game where he throws 3 interceptions and the Broncos game where they had a chance at the end and couldn't do anything with it. I think because it came when it did, it felt like the worst Jordan Love game. In the second half, he actually made some really nice throws and some really good plays. It just didn't matter. And they didn't really have answers at the end. Even when Jaren Hall was the quarterback, they could not seem to get it going. They had a chance to make that game a game and it never materialized. This version of Jordan Love, though, is just, it's a different guy. And I think this is a great tensile test for just how real that is.
Yeah, I was thinking like this will be a good test for the Packers and Jordan Love to see just like how real this sort of last like surge has been. And part of that is because the last 2 teams that the Vikings have played have diced Brian Flores. Cincinnati scored 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter in that game. Yeah. And they didn't do a lot in the first 3 quarters, but they had open dudes all game long. They had clean throwing pockets all day long, even against the blitzes. They won on the whiteboard all day. And it just took for the fourth quarter for Jake Browning to start hitting balls.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't just like Chase and Higgins being special. Like guys were open.
Yeah, no, it was definitely like holes in the zone. I've been saying for 2 weeks, Flores got solved, and I've been getting in a lot of trouble for it. I think that scheme got solved by Zach Taylor. And then I think Ben Johnson just kind of took those concepts, decided to do protection the way that the Lions do protection with a lot of max protection. And I would bet dollars to donuts that the Packers will do the same thing. Max protect 3 routes down the field and just try to win like 3v5 in coverage instead of trying to win 5v7 in coverage. And
that's kind of how Green Bay wants to play generally anyway. They want to let's go heavy play action and get, 6-7 in the protection and just try and get 2 or 3 guys out on the route concept. And I think that is, I don't want to preempt our conversation about the scheme part of this, but it was interesting to me that the Bengals offensive play designer and play caller is a Shanahan tree disciple. And then the Lions last week, you've got a Shanahan tree quarterback. Ben Johnson doesn't really have a tree, right? But he uses a lot of those core concepts and then adds in all of his little cool sprinkles. And so I was like, okay, if there's going to be an opportunity there, Matt LaFleur loves to borrow, and a lot of the stuff looked transferable to me.
It's all universal. It's Dagger. Who doesn't have Dagger?
Yeah.
Like,
the Packers run Dagger 5 times a game if it works once.
Oh, they might run it 10 because the Vikings have not been able to cover Dagger. So like that's the kind of thing where it's like, okay, if Jordan Love can figure out which coverage he's going up against, which once you get to post snap, the coverages are all fairly vanilla, right? You've got some cover 3, you've got some cover 2, you've got, depending on who the buzzer is and who the, Tampa runner is, who all those guys are, is hard to figure out pre-snap. But once they've all declared and everybody's in a spot, it's very easy to figure out who's in what spot. So if Jordan Love can get to that post-snap place, then it can be a fairly easy run from him from there. But the hard part about Flores' defense is getting to that point, getting past the pre-snap spot, getting no pressure, picking up the blitz, or adjusting your process post-snap after a sim pressure backed off and like reconfiguring the way that you think about it on the fly. That's the challenges that Flores wants to present. Once you get to that point, with any blitz heavy defense, once you pick up the blitz, the coverage is in a lot of trouble.
And so that's why this is going to be such a fun cat and mouse game. We're going to talk more matchups in just a second here. Locked on Packers, Locked on Vikings, a crossover Thursday. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks. It is daily fantasy made easy. One of my favorite things to do right now, Luke, is cross sports. Basketball season makes this a lot of fun. If I don't like the value that I'm getting around the NFL, I can always grab Damian Lillard and throw him in my lineup as well. Just put a couple players together and you can win up to 25 times your money. Put 10 bucks in, you can win 250 if you play it right. Plus quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types is what makes PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Again, 25 times your money if you play it right. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL for that first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, it's daily fantasy sports made easy. And thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers and Locked On Vikings their first listens every day. I guess you got to go or, you can't do and. That's just how numbers work. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Speaking of firsts, Locked On Sports Today, here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. All right, Luke, when you are putting together your breakdowns, you're watching the cut-ups on this game, what is the first thing, if you were going to like put together your report? Okay, this is the thing that I'm watching for matchup-wise. What is it?
Pause. Hey, so I'm about to talk a lot about Justin Jefferson and Jair Alexander. And if you see the news, you might have seen that Jair Alexander will be suspended for this game for conduct detrimental to the team. Peter is going to have more on his show about that. So go check that out if you're curious. But a lot of the points we said in this next segment are still kind of interesting and worth keeping. So just know we're working with outdated information. We'll all get through this together. Okay, continuing on. It's hard because there aren't any players left on the Vikings, so who's even interesting anymore? They're devastated, right? No TJ Hawkinson, ACL, MCL, might not have him for the start of next season with that kind of injury.
Brutal injury.
Jordan Addison is day-to-day. Hey, we'll get both Jair Alexander day-to-day.
Okay, because at beginning of the week it was week to week, right? I thought I saw that.
No, he said he's day to day, so he'll. Okay, they're not sure about him. I think that's I don't want to answer your injury question kind of answer. How about Justin Jefferson and Jair Alexander though? We get this finally. We didn't have JJ for the last matchup, right?
Right.
They haven't seen each other since the Lambeau game around this time last year.
Since the gritty.
Yeah, since the worst gritty, that was worse than Mike Gesicki. If somebody's got to tell him to work on that.
My guess is he's been practicing.
I would hope so, because that was that. Come on, man. If you're gonna gritty on Justin Jefferson, you gotta know how to do it,
JR,
man.
put
Come
this
on
your bulletin board. Get it on your bulletin board right now. Let's go.
Please, I'm helping you. I'm trying to help you, Jair. So that should be an interesting matchup, and especially if there's no Jordan Addison. To be honest, if I'm Joe Barry, I don't even know if you need that matchup, because if there's no Jordan Addison, there's no TJ Hawkinson. The next best dude on the Vikings is it's like KJ Osborne and Johnny Munt from there on out. And KJ Osborne might not even be the next best receiver on the Vikings. It might be Brandon Powell, who's a tiny guy, but he runs a pretty good route, gets pretty good separation. He's had some clutch moments this year. But it really becomes kind of Justin Jefferson.
Number 4 is also extremely high.
Absolutely. Yes. A little scrappy wide receiver 4 with the number 4, who's also the punt returner, workhorse kind of guy, special teamer. Love it. I love Brandon Powell. But yeah, it's Justin Jefferson and guys. Like, he's not a premier weapon of the Vikings, right? So you might not even need to shadow him with Jair Alexander. Just double him all day and have whoever on him, and the Vikings won't have anywhere else to go.
I don't know what the situation will be. And look, we're recording this before we hear from Matt LaFleur on Wednesday. And so I don't know. Joe Barry might not be the defensive coordinator of this game on Sunday. Like, we can't be sure at this point.
Oh, wow.
But look, I don't know. I may be calling you at 11 o'clock tonight going, hey, we need to re-record this. But let's hope that doesn't happen. But also, like, maybe let's hope it does. So
that would be sick. I'd be in.
It would be wild, and we'd honestly have to keep all of this in too, just for like the walls of it. But whatever is happening here for the Packers defense, the plan has to be double JJ and make everyone else beat you, because the Packers have had issues at times this season with teams who are willing to stay committed to the run. And the Vikings, just like, even with their 17th quarterback, are just not going to do that. We know that that's not going to be a thing that they do. And so I kind of love that. I love that. I think Kevin O'Connell, for as much as I made fun of you about the praise that you heaped on him last year, I'm so impressed with what he has done culture-wise, with what he is schematically. I think he's a very impressive coach. And so he's going to find ways, knowing that the double teams are coming. Like the Packers did this with Devontae Adams. They knew you were going to double him, and they found ways to get him open anyway. And that's going to be the cat and mouse game. The question is, how healthy is Jair Alexander? Is he healthy enough to press Justin Jefferson at the line of scrimmage as much as he did last year? You had a great cut up about this. Like, the difference between when Jair was able to press him and have safety help was night and day difference from when he was playing off or did not have help. Like, it just is a different matchup. And that was a healthy Jair Alexander. This is not one. And so, all of the discussion about Brian Flores versus Jordan Love, like, this is such a funny matchup to me now, because it's going to be Nick Mullins and or Jaron Hall and or maybe Josh Dobbs if things go really sideways, but a really good play caller against a defensive coach who's fighting for his life. And so how does that cash out ultimately? I don't know. It's not the ideal circumstance to take advantage of Joe Barry or any, whatever, a backup play caller, if that's the case, but they've done it all year. They've kind of done it. And so Bryce Young and DJ Chark was not the ideal matchup last week, and yet they torched this defense. So I kind of don't know where to go with this defense at this point, because they played more man coverage last week. They blitzed more last week, and it just mostly didn't matter.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see exactly what the issue is. I will say we should talk about the run game a little bit too, and I don't know how it's going for you guys. We have a running back controversy too.
Well, that's because one guy seems obviously better than the other.
Yeah, I will say Ty Chandler did not have a great day against the Lions. He blew a couple blocks. He misread a couple, in my opinion, at least, although I think that's a subjective deal. But he did get the majority of the snaps, and Alexander Mattison played a backup role. You can say he wasn't quite healthy, and they had him in the backup role kind of as we're just, we're going to put you in, but just a little, because you're not quite 100%. But that always feels like a lie to me, because like he can either play or he can't. Like, it's either safe to put him out there or it isn't. But that's the line the Vikings would give you. So I'll be very curious to see what they have with at running back this time. It's interesting. Like, they introduced at the stadium, I was at the game, they introduced Ty Chandler as the starting running back. And usually when it's an injured player on a pitch count, they won't do that. They'll say starting tight end TJ Hawkinson, but then he just won't play the whole game.
Right.
So I think Alexander Mattison got benched, and they're sort of using the injury to save face about it.
By the way, that's what happened to Brock Purdy on Monday night. No one can convince me that that's not what happened. But go ahead.
Everyone's fighting so hard about that.
15 interceptions, and they were like, no, he's got a stinger. It's like, guys, I watched the game. You don't have to do this. It's okay.
Who would ever throw 4 interceptions in a game? That certainly wouldn't happen to 2 different guys on the same team within 3 weeks, right? I'm tired, Peter. I'm tired.
Do we think there has ever been a team, probably in like the 80s, because they just were like wild with the football, but like in the modern age, a team with 3 quarterbacks that throw 4 interceptions in a season? Like, do we think that's happened in the last 20 years?
In the last 20 years, no way. In the 70s and 60s, like 4 interceptions
probably
wasn't that weird.
Yeah, probably.
So like probably. Like there are teams. I was looking it up because I was like, are they setting turnover records?
You've been alive.
Crazy.
I'd probably not happened.
Yeah, and I looked up like turnover records and stuff, and there are teams that got like 60 turnovers in a year.
Yeah.
So those records will remain untouched. My apologies to the 1961 Broncos. The AFL was special. Anyways, yeah, it like how is the run defense in comparison to the coverage and all the issues there. How's Devonte Wyatt doing? I thought he cooked in the last Vikings Packers game.
He is either, and this is true, game to game, play to play, series to series, quarter to quarter, half to half. He is either awesome or totally terrible. And so like there is no in between. He is and against the Panthers, he was terrible. Dumb penalties, was not even out on a special teams play where he was supposed to be on I think it was the kick block team, and they had to call a timeout. Or no, he ended up getting an offsides call on a punt, I think it was. But either way, it was just like, or it's 3rd and 8 and he wins in 0.2 seconds and creates a pressure and it's an incomplete. And you're just like, how did that, like, what, how are these guys the same? But he's not a good run defender, and unless he's getting penetration. And so this Packers run defense, they were pretty good against Carolina, frankly. Now the Carolina running offense is not exactly, Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams back in the day. But they were pretty gap sound. They played pretty aggressively. Isaiah McDuffie played much better than we've seen Devondre Campbell play when he's been hurt. When the Packers have had both linebackers healthy, even if they're backups like Isaiah McDuffie and Quay Walker, or Isaiah McDuffie and Devondre Campbell, they've been much better, but they've just not been healthy the whole season. And they've really had to rely on backups more often than they would like to. And so it's one of the 5 worst rush defenses in the league. Again, every year. It doesn't matter Mike Pettin, doesn't matter Joe Barry. That has just been the case since Matt LaFleur has been there. It must pain Matt LaFleur a great deal that the running defense is what it is. But it is what it is. And so the Vikings are just not exactly equipped to exploit that to its fullest, except, and this is when it really shows up and really kills them, in the red zone. Teams that can run in the red zone, it just is
great news for you.
It's a cheat code. Well, but the Vikings were able to do it a little bit in the last game, and so that really helped. The Packers, I have been joking all season, Luke. My bit on Twitter is that the Packers lead the league in running backs scoring inside the 5-yard line untouched, standing up.
Oh, wow.
And so
they didn't get a rushing touchdown until like Thanksgiving.
But didn't they not get a rushing touchdown and then score against Green Bay? I thought that was
it the Green Bay game? So it was Halloween.
It was Green Bay. Yeah,
it was like a whole thing. It's again, stoppable force and movement.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, Ty Chandler, get your prize picks in. Ty Chandler, more than half a touchdown.
Exactly right. All right. Speaking of the Ty Chandler, the keys to victory for me are always my daily fantasy with PrizePicks and my FanDuel picks. That's it. Like those are the keys. Hit my overs and we'll be all set. Thank you very much. We'll talk about the keys to victory as we close out another crossover Thursday here. Locked on Packers, Locked on Vikings. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. Both the Packers and Vikings could be interviewing defensive coordinators this offseason for very different reasons. We'll see if those jobs line up on LinkedIn. We'll see. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. 1 billion people, you got to find one defensive coordinator, right? Like even if they're going to be better than Joe Barry, probably. Post your link for free at LinkedIn. You would hope. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. And again, thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers and Locked On Vikings your first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. And Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, Luke, we got to figure out how this game is going to be won and or lost by our respective teams. I had the joke on the graphic last time, and was it really even a joke? Who does the dumbest thing? It could be anybody once again. And that is just the beautiful thing about both of these teams that we cover And so when you're thinking about, okay, the Vikings win if they do this, what is this?
I bet you can guess what I'm going to say. Stop turning the ball over.
Yeah.
It's turnovers. It's always turnovers. The Vikings turn the ball over 3-4 times a game in their losses. In their wins, they either, tie the turnover battle, win the turnover battle. They have just total yardage outgained 4 of the 8 teams that beat them. But they turned the ball over immensely in all of those games, and they tied one of those teams in the yardage battle. So they're going toe-to-toe with teams until they make a stupid mistake. You get rid of the stupid mistakes, you win the games, but I don't trust the Vikings to get rid of the stupid mistakes. It's New Year's and they still haven't. Why would they do it now? So I think the thing you had on the graphic last time, still very prescient. Whoever does the dumbest thing loses the game. And Nick Mullins sure does love to do catastrophically dumb things. This is the style of quarterback you get with Nick Mullins, who I do think is going to play. If I had to guess, but I'm guessing, but that's my guess. He's incredibly aggressive. He threw like 90% of his passes past 15 yards against the Lions, and was correct too. It was crazy. But
Arif Hassan pointed out in the Pro Football Box Score, which had his passing grades and his ADOT and all this stuff, and it was just like one of the most remarkable performances I've ever seen. Like multiple big time throws, a ton of turnover worthy plays, an 8 out of over 11, and yet had a passing grade of 42. And it was just like one of the all time incredible performances.
Because he whiffed a bunch of them and they got picked off. That's what it is. If you've got him in a sack, he will try to flick the ball away to get an incomplete pass, which A, is usually grounding anyways, and B, he will throw interceptions to your defensive tackle. Like, this happens. And Josh Dobbs did the exact same thing too. So we have 2 different guys that will throw an interception to your nose tackle. It's
Kenny Clark, get ready, get it in on PrizePicks. Interception, get that interception.
I'm not kidding. That's a decent move if you can find it.
I like
it. The Vikings' capacity to do dumb crap is all the way up to Mike Tice 2000s levels right now. It's horrible. So I don't know where you guys are at, but if this game comes down to the dumbest thing, I don't feel good about it.
Yeah, the turnovers, I would have said turnovers had you not. So I'm not going to do the thing and say, hey, you're exactly right. Like, you got to protect. It's true. Don't turn the ball over. So let me try and give you a different answer for the Packers. Just don't let Justin Jefferson beat you. That's it. If you don't and that's what happened last time. They didn't let Justin Jefferson beat them. And for a slew of other reasons, Keyshawn Nixon returns, the kickoff 105 yards. And that felt like a harbinger of things to come. I don't know how you felt in real time about it, but it did in that moment. It sort of felt
I was at a different game. So I actually was just seeing it on Twitter. Yeah.
And you're just like,
okay. A bunch of friends and I went to a Rams Chargers game. We had a lot of fun. And then I looked at the score. I was like, oh, geez.
Well, you picked a good game to not watch
I guess
of the Vikings then for sure. But just don't let Justin Jefferson beat you. And I find it hard to believe that Nick Mullins and Brandon Powell are going to be no shot at Brandon Powell, but just like, it's probably not going to happen. Nick Mullins throwing to Josh Oliver and Johnny Munt. If you lose that, just like cancel the season. And so I think that's bang on. It would help to create some turnovers. The Packers don't really do that, but guess what? The Lions didn't either. And then they ran into a Nick Mullins buzzsaw, and he's going to throw.
He'll just whiff a deep ball, and it'll just like land in the safety's lap, and it's just okay. Like
I'll take that. Hey, look what I found. Hey, this is so great.
that was like Kirby Joseph just was not in position on like any of those, but they just like landed on him, and it was all right. Yeah, like make the catch, but get the return. Good for you, man.
So our New Year's Eve battle, Vikings -1.5 at home, which means basically FanDuel sees this as an even game on a neutral field.
They're favored?
Yeah.
Okay.
But, look, the Packers are +114 on the money line. So we're talking about the smallest of margins.
Yeah, got it.
One of the other podcasts that I listen to, they call it the Tic Tac zone because it's just a little 1.5 calories. Vegas sees it as basically even. FanDuel sees it as basically even. How do you see it?
I sympathize with Vegas. Yeah, that reads. We have no idea what to do with this game.
Yeah.
I think that the Vikings can win if they fix a few of their issues. I invite Packers fans to listen to yesterday's Locked On Vikings. You guys might like it more than you think. Because I kind of went in on all the things that the Vikings are doing wrong in this last. They've lost 4 of 5. They're skidding to a halt in this season.
Yeah.
And yeah, part of that is you got to rein Nick Mullins in, and you got to kind of calm him down and make him stop doing dumb stuff that gives the ball away. I don't think that they can do that. Nobody's done that with Nick Mullins. He hasn't done that in his career, let alone here. I don't believe in it. You got to stop making stupid mistakes. Like I said, it's New Year's. They haven't stopped yet. Why would I believe that they will stop now? Like, all of the things they need to do have been problems all year long. If they fix those things, they can go toe to toe with anybody. But I don't really believe that they can. So I'm not very bullish on the Vikings. I walked away from that Lions game saying, all right, well, what draft pick do we get if we're 7-10? Because that's how it feels. So go prove me wrong, Vikings. I'm going to be a hater until you decide to show something that's worth our time.
Okay. I mean, I'm going to pick the Packers in this one as well, even if I don't love the defense. I'm just given, I mean, the Hawkinson and Addison injuries combined makes it really, really tough. And
yeah, there's no guys.
I was saying on Twitter, like, yes, the Chargers, or excuse me, the Panthers have no skill position players, but they've had no skill position players all year. Like, it's just different when, like, okay, Adam Thielen, at least you know what you're getting from Adam Thielen and DJ Chark. They're now going to have to rely on guys that just like have not had to be focal points of their offense all season. And so that makes this a little bit different.
They kind of did before, like when Justin Jefferson himself was down, and then it was like Addison and these guys. If you don't have
Hawk and Addison and you just have Jefferson, I guess you still just have Jefferson. But then what is the counterpunch if the Packers do the one thing that they have to do to win, and that is divert all of their resources to Justin Jefferson? So we'll see. We'll be live personally on Locked On Packers after the game.
We've got the postcast. The Locked On Vikings postcast goes up on Locked On Sports Minnesota. I'll be on that.
So check those out. And for everyone else, we'll see you on Friday.